Good morning, and welcome to another episode in our series of artists that we're interviewing who are participating in this upcoming Riverdale Art Walk. So the Riverdale Art Walk, for those of you who don't know, is coming up in less than 2 weeks, June 18 and 19. And we're very excited to actually have a full show this year again with 170 artists. 150 will be in the park. So in celebration of that, we're interviewing a few of the artists who are participating so that you can kind of understand and learn a little bit about their process, their inspiration, and what to expect when you go to the show. So this morning, I'm going to be talking to Barbara Buntin. She is a collage artist, and I see that she is here, so I'm just going to scoot right in and invite her. Hopefully she will be here soon. Hello. Oh,
Hi,
you're sideways.
Oh, I'm sideways. Okay, I need to just switch my camera. I wasn't actually sure which way I had to be.
I think you should physically just be able to. Yep, that looks good.
Okay, gotta help here. Good. Okay. How's that, Kate?
That looks
Is that
awesome.
okay? All right, thanks so much. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Welcome, Barbara, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
I'm excited about it, yeah. I'm excited about the show, too. A live show?
Yeah, I know. A live show with actually more than like 3 people, which would be great.
Yeah, you've been doing lots of those, yeah. This will be
Yeah,
my
well,
first, this will be my first live one in a few years, so very happy
yeah,
about that.
yeah, me too. It's amazing how you kind of, you forget all the stuff that you need to get. Like I found that the first show I did, I kept forgetting, like labels and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but, I think that the energy of doing a show in person is going to be incredible. Yeah. So let's talk about you. So I know that you work in collage, and I'd just love to know a little bit more. Oh, am I losing you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Wonder what
Okay.
happened.
Sounds like it might be your Wi-Fi, I think.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay, good.
All right. So yeah, so anyway, so I would love to know a little bit more about your collage work and how you started getting into collage and what your inspiration is.
Okay, well, I got into collage, I think the way some other people do, a little bit by accident. I was doing a lot of printmaking, and my interest was primarily in monotype printing, which is, in my case, putting printing inks onto a piece of glass and, moving it around with brushes or scratching into it with different tools to make a bit of texture, and then putting a piece of paper on to pull a print off. So mono, you only get one off of that. Really experimental, very painterly style of printmaking, but you get a lot of stuff that doesn't work out quite the way you want. And of course, why would
And
you throw
parts of
that
it, I
out?
guess, that work out really well.
Yeah. So really, it started with using those prints that I mostly liked, but yeah, as you say, some parts work, some don't, and I couldn't resist, ripping into them and cutting into them and starting to put them together. So I love that so much that I started printing sheets of paper for that purpose. So now that is my process. I spend a bunch of time printing just full sheets of paper, just with texture, design, color. It might be something like this that starts out just as a
Ooh.
heavy piece of printmaking paper or drawing paper, and then I print a texture and design on it. And I don't
Oh,
necessarily
wow.
know where that's going to be used. I'm sort of thinking about maybe a rock design or, a water design or something as I'm playing with it. But it's interesting how once I've got that piece of paper, it ends up getting chopped up and used in lots of different pieces for different purposes. So that's my process, a bunch of printmaking, and then I go into the collage part.
So do you find that the way you approach your monoprint printmaking now is different than when you were creating a monoprint for the sole purpose of that being the piece?
I do, and what's great about it is it's absolute play for me. That part of the process is just messing around. It's practically like finger painting is for kids. And whenever I'm outdoors, most of the inspiration for me comes from the landscape. I think it does for lots of people. And I'm really dialed into texture. And so when I'm printmaking, I'm often trying to figure out how to recreate the textures I see in nature. And as I say, I don't necessarily know where I'm going to use it in the piece, but that's the sort of exciting part about it. And you start to notice how repetitive or there are a lot of patterns in nature that repeat. So wavy lines, you start to see them in water ripples, but then you also see a very similar kind of ripple in sand, or up the side of a cliff, the lines of the cracks in the rock are like, which is wonderful to observe when you're out there. If I managed to, like I printed a whole big sheet with this linear pattern on it just by
really neat.
drawing onto the back of the paper, and that pushed it into the printing inks. Well, that was a huge sheet of print paper when I started. I think that's almost all I have left now. And it appears in 5 or 6 different collage pieces as landscape, coming down a hill, or, well, in this one, which isn't in its frame yet. So there's some of that paper running down, showing the contour of the hill, but also creating depth down into a ravine. I've used it in sort of as lines to lead you into a composition. You can imagine why my mind just keeps going about what next, because I've got these little ridiculous scraps of paper left, but I could use that. That could become the next. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like just a lot of fun to be able to kind of play and create all those different original pieces of paper in colors and textures and patterns and stuff too.
Yeah, it keeps me loose. I have a tendency to get a little too controlling in the collage process and want things to work a certain way, and dive into the details, which is great. I love that, but I think you can tighten up a little bit in the process. So having the balance in my practice of doing the printing and then doing the collaging and moving back and forward between those, I think has been really good for me and for my process. So. Yeah,
well, I think it's really cool that I like the fact that you kind of have continuous depths in your work. Like at first you see the landscape and the ravine and stuff like that, and then you kind of look more deeply into the texture within the trees, and then you look more deeply into how the paper is made. And I think that that's always wonderful to have a piece of art that the more you look at it, the more you see from it, and you see different things every time you look.
Thanks. I appreciate that observation, and actually it is a goal for me. I like the idea that there's a relatively simple composition to start that just hits you as an interesting design, and then the more you live with it. And I've had that feedback from people who have purchased the work and have lived with it for a while, and I saw something yesterday I'd never seen before. I mean, what a delight, right? That's
very cool.
Yeah, I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So what do they say? That you're hiding Smarties or Easter eggs or something? Maybe that's what I'm doing.
That's right. Yeah, more of a video game concept, I think. But yeah, I think that works.
I can't play video games, so I'll just have to do it in my work. Yeah.
And do you typically work, like obviously the pieces that you're creating, the collages are very, very abstract. Do you always then create more, I won't say representational because I appreciate that they're kind of more impressionistic, but more representational landscapes, or do you do pure abstract with your designs as well?
I seem to have moved a little bit away from the purely abstract in the last year or so, but it's still an area I'm quite fascinated by. And I have had a lot of ideas recently about moving a little more back into that area. So I can see that coming back. I think well, like all of us, you get a little more captivated by certain things at certain times. And I can sort of tell that more abstract stuff is simmering. So I'll be heading back there.
I think it's sometimes interesting as an artist, the journey too, where you move from one thing to another thing, and then there's something that piques your interest and you go back to the original thing and sort of just make it a bit more sophisticated, a bit more advanced, or take it to that next level, right?
I think you're right. I think it's interesting how we learn from our own work by reviewing it, and I've even gone back into older pieces in the last year. Something that I knew I really liked, but I wasn't quite sure it was where I wanted it to be. And I recognize I'm coming back to it with some learning and some experience that, I didn't have at that moment. I couldn't quite see what it needed, and now I can. So that's pretty great too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I understand that your family, your grandmother and stuff was very kind of involved in nature, and it sounds like maybe she helped you to really see beyond the obvious within the nature.
She really did. She influenced all of us in that way. She probably should have been a school teacher or an archaeologist or something. She didn't get the opportunity in her time and in her day, but she read a lot, and she was just really interested in nature, and she was quite a spiritual woman. So she was thinking about how, in her understanding, how God had made the world, and she, we'd go out for a drive or a walk or whatever, and she would be pointing out all this stuff that, I wonder if there was a glacier that came through this area, a million years ago, and it carved this out. And, I have to admit, all of us kids at some stage or another kind of rolled our eyes at her. But in reality, it obviously influenced all of us, and certainly it sticks with me. And I'm sure my kids rolled their eyes at me on hikes and whatever too, because you just start to see the landscape differently with that idea about how is this made and what will it look like in another 1,000 years. So I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right, and I think that just there is something to be said for just being able to kind of putter in the dirt and really, really look at what you're seeing as opposed to what you think you're seeing. People see a tree and they see a brown trunk and they see green leaves, but we know that when you look at it more closely, there's a lot more there. And I think that that's part of the role of an artist, to bring that to the forefront for people.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I often notice is how different my perception of a certain time and place will be from maybe somebody that is experiencing the same time and place as I am. We're there together, but what we take from it, what we remember, what we notice is very different. It's always interesting to have those conversations later on about the things that have piqued your interest. And yeah, we bring ourselves to every situation, and some of us are just more tuned in to that detail and movement in landscape. And yeah, I think that individual perception is really what the artist brings forward.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, I believe your background is in art therapy, which kind of feels a bit like peeling back layers of maybe trauma or things that people are going through. It's interesting to me that then your work is about building up layers. I just wonder if there's a connection there, if that's just a weird question.
Oh. Well, as an art therapist, I should have an immediate answer for that, shouldn't I?
I don't know. Or maybe that was an unfair question. I don't know.
I think it's interesting. It's a great observation, Kate. Thanks. Layers have always fascinated me in terms of interpersonal relationships and therapy. And as you say, the way you come back to your work at different times in your life is the same way you come back to different problems or issues that you're trying to resolve in your life. When you come back to that place, you think, oh, here I go again. But no, you're coming at it with new experience and new insight. So I'm sure that they are very connected. And it's interesting how, especially when I'm working in more strictly abstract pieces, I often think about the shapes as a relationship, how one shape is relating to another, and should this one be more dominant, or this one be, are they really connecting where they should? And I realize I'm having them have a conversation. They're having a relationship in the piece.
Right.
So, you're right. They're absolutely connected in that way. So.
Hmm. And so if people are coming to the Riverdale Art Walk to come and see you, what should they expect to see in your tent?
Well, all of my work is framed. I have nice custom-made birch frames, which have a bit of a shadow box depth, so that enhances the layering effect. I've started using some beautiful new glass that is lower reflection, which I'm quite excited about because the clarity is amazing and you can see those layers even better. Excuse me, we're both having trouble with our throats today.
I know, I try not to cough.
Yeah, so my tent, anything that is there, I sort of work in several sizes right down. That's the smallest size that I do, and
Oh, it's beautiful.
Little corners where you want to pull into some detail in your house or on a shelf or whatever. They really pull you in. So I'll have a mixture of sizes. They'll all be the paper collage format, and lots of variety of scenes that I'd love to talk to people about, because that's the best part.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Well, that's wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Kate. It's been fun.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your work in real life, because it's been a while at the Riverdale Art Walk. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have yourself a great day. Bye.